You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Welborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
Hey, Power Athlete Nation, I want you to buckle up for part 2 of the Q&A with Mr. Arash Soofani. As you know, we get a ton of questions, whether it be on the Discord or the training programs, and really just even to info. So in an effort to answer all these questions, I did some Q&As and invited one of my training partners and one of the Dragon Slayers, Mr. Arash Soofani, to come in and have a spirited discussion. I find it a little bit awkward just talking to the camera, so I like having somebody in here. So buckle in. This is phase 2, part 2 of the Q&A with Arash. Hey, welcome to another episode of Power Athlete Radio. Not just any episode, a special episode, a part 2 with Mr. Arash Soofani.
Heyo.
Asking me questions about Power Athlete, the training, and helping the people listening that might be doing our training programs or involved in the mythology.
Let's guide these lost souls to the promised land.
Well, this is on the heels of a conversation that we just got done having. Last night, Jordan Peterson spoke here in Austin, Texas on his He Who Wrestled with God tour. And it was an interesting discussion, to say the least. At this point, Jordan Peterson has entered a realm of idol. I mean, he's really entered this interesting ivory tower where every one of his thoughts is met with a standing ovation, regardless of whether or not they're coherent or not. Mm-hmm. While it was great to hear him get up and speak, the rhetorician in me needed a thesis. I needed direction. It was very just spoken word. Mm-hmm. And if it was supposed to be spoken word and he was just showing us his process, then tell me that. And I'll just sit back and be entertained. But I want to be convinced of something. I want you to present an argument and I want you to back it up. If it's that the world has gone woke and we're going the wrong direction, okay, then make that statement and then back it up and show me. Just don't drop me in the middle of your thought process. And more importantly, try to interlay it with this, esoteric pieces of a conversation that, I'm not necessarily privy to. So I felt like it was very Emperor New Clothes for me.
Yeah, but I definitely gleaned some new perspective on where it comes from in terms of how faith has guided his life. So I took a positive from that, but at the same time, it felt like he was working through a process on stage and could use a little bit more programming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're going to make
programming,
wow, was that a great transition?
Yeah.
I think the world's looking for answers in which things are confusing. Like just for an example, we're in this situation with transgender and woke and, pronouns and this. And for a lot of people, the first question I get is, how many people is this? We live in a country of 330 million. How many people are we talking about? Millions? No, it's hundreds, maybe a few thousand. So a very, very small percentage of the population feels like the tail is wagging the dog. And is this really an issue that anybody outside of these individuals is running into? I mean, I know it's not something I run into. Personally, but I also am somewhat isolated within the group. So do I think that people have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? 100%. But I also have the right to be confused and, more importantly, not understand. I'm allowed to have empathy and being like, I see what you're going through. But at the end of the day, I don't have the equipment or the wherewithal or the framework to understand where you're coming from, because this is not something that necessarily affects me. But I also look at it and think that it feels like a lot of confused people and a lot of people that are lost that need a good voice.
You ever have that uncle or that dad when you're trying to do something physical, whether it's just like hang something on the wall, and then while you're doing it, they're like, no, not like that. No. Oh, come on, man. And it's like, can I just get a second to figure this out? Can I just get a second to be confused about something so that I can question what I'm doing, so I could work through my own process before you step in and do it? And I love my uncle to death, but he's one of the most anal mechanics that's ever lived and could not bear to see me do something incorrect, use the wrong tool or whatever. And sometimes I'm like, man, I just wish I could be confused for a second, just for a second, so I could figure it out on my own. But at the same time, I'm glad that he facilitated the environment, like had the right shop, had the right tools, put me in the right place and frame of mind. Like we went and got Yoo-Hoos and donuts, and then I knew it was time to work after we were done. So,
yeah, but failure is an integral part of success. I don't believe there's really success without failure. You have to fail and suck at something, and whether or not that be through, I don't know. I know it's a terrible word these days, but shame. I've talked extensively on this podcast that I believe shame to be a powerful motivator. That if I'm not good at something, the shame of not being good and not being able to meet the standard should stir something in me to want to be better, to strive to be better. I remember when I first started welding, my welding was awful. And the shame of like having to present this to the world, or more importantly, weld something that somebody else might crawl underneath and look at and be like, oh God, look at that. That motivated me to learn to weld. And I remember when I first started, like I was good at grinding because I had to grind my welds. And I got to the point where I was like, I will never grind a weld again because I'm never going to suck at welding. And I just put the time and the effort in. Watched videos, got mentorship, did everything I had to all of a sudden be able to lay a nice bead and feel confident to be able to do it. But if I hadn't had the shame of sucking, or more importantly, the shame of not doing something up to standard, would I have resulted in the same thing? I don't know. I think that happened to me in college. I go and, obviously we get there, we get to Berkeley. I remember the first paper I wrote, I didn't do well. And I got tore up. And, I'd gone to high school and I'd done well in high school because it was easy. So I go see the professor. Hey, I got a poor grade on this. And he's like, you need to up your standard. This is awful. This isn't what the standard is. And you need to understand what the standard is. And he said, I wonder if the fact that you're a football player, everybody has made allowances, which I'm not going to make an allowance. Just because you play football doesn't mean anything. Up your game. And, people constantly hear this, you got to level up. What the fuck does that mean? Level up. Like, the world just needs to level up. Everybody needs to level up. No, you know what I needed to do? I needed to work harder. I needed to prepare. I needed to write better. I needed to edit. I needed to find somebody else to help mentor my writing. And I needed to be a better version of myself. And that's all I needed. I never wanted to be in that position again. And instead of just blaming this guy and being, well, he doesn't know. No, I took it personally. And I don't know where we're going with this, but
there's shame is a necessary to the process, but ain't no shame in trying.
Well, think about jiu-jitsu. There is a little bit of shame at getting smashed. And you and I have both been smashed by people better than us. And instead of just like going and kicking a can and being like, I'm never going back, I'm throwing my gi in the trash. Yeah. You know what you do? You go, fuck. The reason I got smashed is because I'm not working hard enough. I haven't done enough that I need to not get smashed. Yeah. So you know what? I'm going to go back tomorrow. I'm going to get smashed. I'm going to keep coming back until I don't get smashed and I start smashing.
Until I escape mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Side control. Shall we get into these questions, John?
Let's fucking do it.
Yes. Okay. Where do we want to start?
I'll leave it up to you.
General training questions. Number 1. In the midst of various fitness trends, what's your go-to power athlete training program for optimizing overall health? In general, I like to think of
health is an interesting one.
Yeah.
We interrupt this episode with a shameless self-promotion. Do you want to build thick, sidewalk-splitting slabs of muscle? Let me introduce you to Jack Street. Get access to the same tried and true training methods I followed during my 10 years in the NFL, all to walk into training camp at 308 pounds at sub 8% body fat. Punch your ticket to the gain train and join thousands of residents already following Jack Street. Head to powerathletehq.com/Jack Street and claim your 7-day free trial today. Now back to the show. I think health is can be measured in many ways. If you want to take some, standard ones, we can look at VO2 max, resting heart rate. Now we have HRV. There's a million different ways to measure health, but I think what people are really talking about, health as a form of longevity and also usefulness. Mm-hmm. So I'm healthy enough to be able to push my kids around the block in a stroller. I'm healthy enough to go change a car tire if something dramatic happens. Like, you're in a situation like yesterday, we're at the Jordan Peterson event and somebody falls. Are you healthy and strong enough to help them up? And more importantly, whisk them away if they are in danger. So, I mean, I think healthy is an interesting piece because everybody defines it a little bit different. For me, health looks like good sleep, good food, good blood work. Do I feel happy and confident and, all these other key factors. So for me, it's the program that you can execute with the greatest form of frequency and relative intensity. For most people that are following a program where health is a determining factor, or more importantly, some form of underlying current, it's probably going to be grindstone.
Right.
We run into a ton of people that have, 5-6 days a week of work, that have multiple kids and jobs and travel and have a busy schedule, that aren't some 20-something-year-old kid that has, 60 hours a week to work out, but is kind of working. I mean, for you, everything that you do, not only within training and trying to be a professional athlete, but also, working and managing properties and training the kids at the gym. I mean, all of these things that you're trying to manage, you need a somewhat flexible program.
Yeah.
And, one day might get screwed, like, hey, I can't make it today, I have obligations, but feeling like, well, I missed that day, I can't make it up. That's a level of anxiety I don't want for people. I want people to look at it like, I got 7 days a week to train. I got 2 mandatory days. I got a lot of optional days, and I'm going to backfill and fit into what my schedule, because at the end of the day, I have things I need to accomplish. Training is one of them, but it's not the only thing.
Mm-hmm. And right, health and performance are on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Because like if I'm trying to be prepared for a specific task, I'll feel healthier if I do for BJJ, do the Dragon Slayer program, because now I'm going to go to BJJ and I won't be beat up after training because I'm going to be prepared for the task at hand.
There's a Facebook group that I'm on. My boy Ingo tapped me into this. It's called Over 40. Like Over 40 Jiu-Jitsu or something to that effect. It's like an Over 40 Jiu-Jitsu Facebook group. Uh-huh. It is so incredibly active. And I love it because one of the biggest issues that I see come up every single day is one, I'm not in good enough shape. I keep getting smashed by younger people. I'm too sore. I mean, not every one of the problems, but the majority of problems that people are dealing with come because they don't have a structured strength and conditioning program that pairs with their jiu-jitsu. They somehow think that jiu-jitsu is their strength and conditioning, and it's not.
Yeah.
They're not durable enough. They lack flexibility, and more importantly, flexibility under load. There's a very big difference between active and passive range of motion. Passively stretching in yoga is not going to help you have flexibility when all of a sudden you got a 230-pound dude sitting on top of you and you're trying to be flexible under that load. Mm-hmm. So one of the issues is that I really think people are not strong enough. They're not durable enough. They don't have a high enough level of conditioning. They haven't done the zone 2 work, and they're just going into something that, there's a lot of people that are extremely talented at this and younger and just more durable than they are. So it's putting them in a bad position. And they go on there asking the oracle for answers. And when they get it, which is you need to get yourself to the gym and get your ass in shape, it can't be that. Oh, I need a new gi. I need a new rash guard. If only I had this knee brace and this supplement. People want to like attach items or, well, what if I just did privates? I mean, it's like, dude, you just need to be fucking stronger and better shape.
Yeah. Prepare yourself so you don't give your PT all the copays for 5 months and then lose out on training.
Well, the other one I think back to is I don't know the relative intensity of the individual's training. So that's an interesting thing in jiu-jitsu. I can only base it from my own point of view and the situation that I'm in. And I'm like, you guys don't roll with killers? You don't show up with dudes that are trying to take your head off that are, and I realize that most people are not in those environments. They're training in this. And so I'm always amazed too, where I'm like, wow, you guys are just going to a class 2 days a week at some like local jiu-jitsu place. And like, you got, so I have to remember that not everybody, which is once again, part of the ivory tower issue. This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show.
When I started training jiu-jitsu, actually the place I started training at Legacy with Alberto Crane, he was actually really happy that I was showing up to train. And I was just a lowly blue belt then, right? And But I would go with this ultra heavyweight guys who are, you know, brown, black belt, and, you know, they would actually have to work. And he was like, dude, thank you for showing up, because sometimes these guys coast and they forget what, like, you know, actually physically strong dudes can do.
Yeah.
And your place on the ivory tower is not, it's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
You need to be challenged.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's going to be lonely you're going to be alone.
Well, it'll be lonely, but it's also never going to force you. Like, it's kind of like if you roll with significantly smaller, weaker people and you overpower them with strength, then does it really ever force you to become a technical jiu-jitsu player? Whereas all of a sudden you roll with really strong dudes that are technical and you're like, God, my strength is not helping here. Yeah. And then they're just smashing you. Like, that is emasculating and forces you to want to be better. I also, too, the other thing which is unique about where we train, and more importantly, the group of individuals who we train, I never feel like there's any personal animosity. Like, I never feel like anybody's like, fuck this dude, I'm going to try to fuck this guy.
No, he just got a jumper on you. It's like playing pickup basketball. Like, how can you get mad at a guy sinking threes? Yeah. You know, that's how it feels like, as opposed to like a guy just beat you up. Yeah. It just feels like, oh man, he just blew by me and got the layup on me. So I got up my game. Yeah. Moving on. Number 2, when it comes to athletic development, could you outline the recommended power athlete pathway from childhood to adulthood? Yeah. Like, what does childhood mean? What age?
For your children, I think when your children are born, the biggest one is getting them moving as soon as possible. So you have to make sure they get enough tummy time. They lift their heads and they follow this kind of athletic progression. But that's just making sure that they're on the floor, moving as much as they can, like putting things just out of reach. Just having your baby lay on the back like a turtle, not good. You know, there's a certain point where you need to start giving them what they call tummy time. But once the kids have gotten into a certain age, let's say maybe like 2 years old, putting them in something that involves some form of different orientations. That's why I like the tumbling, gymnastics for kids. I also like swimming, because, you know, that's also a different environment, different orientation. So for us, we did swimming and gymnastics. We put the girls in dance pretty early on. Martial arts, obviously, something like jiu-jitsu or martial arts that involves using their body in space and being somewhat dynamic. A lot of actually rotation, transverse, sagittal, and also frontal plane type movements. I think jiu-jitsu is great. And as Arash knows, I come to class for cash and I love watching the kids because I see how much fun they have. But there's also a structure to it. It's just not free play. Yeah. But there's a structure. There's a, you know, I also think what's great too is they wear their gis, their little uniforms. So it's different than their school clothes.
They know what time it is.
Yeah. It's like you couldn't have little kids in no gi. No. It would just look like fuck around times. Yeah. Right. So like, it doesn't work that same way. So once they're in the gi, you know, like they're all crisp, and I like that they such a cute little thing to watch those kids show up, especially like, you know, like when they're all like very nervous, like they're over there like tying their belts.
Yeah, they tie their belts like 40-year-olds like this.
Yes.
Like pulling them up like that.
Yeah, like Matt Pollock. Yeah, I call that the Matt Pollock, just north-south, fucking doesn't give a fuck.
I mean, when I tell the kids, I say, hey, especially first-timers, if I see a nervous kid, I tell them, hey, I got this superhero suit for you. So it's like, oh, it's time to be a superhero right now. Like, I'm ready to like use all my powers. So I have a kid that claims genius. To be Spider-Man. So he comes to class and he's Spider-Man.
It's dude, I love it. Because what you're doing is you're influencing all of these kids in a positive way. I mean, here I am at 48 years old, and I'll tell you about when I went and started martial arts when I was 6. It was over 40 years ago, and I remember my first day. I remember getting my white belt and like looking and seeing my belt was white and everybody else's with colors, and feeling like, I want one of those colored belts. Why do I got to have a white belt? They're like, well, that's where everybody starts. You're like, okay, that's part of the deal.
So then I guess you wouldn't really specialize a kid until a certain age, right? So it's like physical development.
Yeah. From there, I would put them in every ball and stick sport that they could, but I would not do any form of specialization. My daughter Jamie's 12 right now. She plays basketball 4 nights a week, and I've been fighting to try to get her back into jiu-jitsu. And she told me yesterday that she's like, I don't want to go to jiu-jitsu. I want to play basketball. And I was like, well, we have to do something else. So she asked, she's like, well, could I go do boxing? And I was like, all right, yeah, if you want to get into boxing. Boxing is fun until you get punched in the mouth, and then you're going to want to do jiu-jitsu. But I'm fine to go take her into it.
Jamie might need it.
She does need to learn to fight.
She talks a lot of shit. So
I told her, dude, the way she runs her mouth, she better learn to defend herself. Yeah. I think baseball's great for hand-eye coordination and also for hitting. I think anything that kids are excited about and more importantly, provide opportunity for. So I got a tee. Zach Evanesh sent me all this stuff like, hey, get this tee, get this. And I just have like the tee out there. We have the net. Cash goes out and hits. And it's amazing just for the fact that I have him go out and hit like anywhere from like 25 to 50 balls off the tee. And then when we go to baseball on Saturday morning, he's like 3 for 3. We got an inside the park home run. He started just crushing the ball.
Oh, yeah.
And then last night when I went to see Jordan Peterson, Kate took him to basketball with Jamie, and they were short one when they were playing pickup. So he got to go in and play and was actually like snatching rebounds and like trying to run the point and was trying to, he's like 8 and he's trying to play with these 12-year-old girls. And was actually, Kate was like, he was playing great. He was trying to run the point. He was putting his fingers up like he was calling plays, but like they were like,
Bugsy, baby.
Oh yeah. He was bringing it up.
Bugsy.
So
then maybe high school, would you say that's kind of a good time as soon as they found their thing? Whether it's basketball or it's jiu-jitsu or it's baseball.
I just need them to do something that's athletic. What I do think, though, that there's a point at which he can start lifting weights. I think it's right around that. What I think that physical age is different than chronological age. I've met kids that were 12 years old that shaved. We just had a Will Fries here who's 25, 26, and he doesn't even own a razor.
Yeah.
So, there's a different kind of age. So I think somewhere around that 8th, 9th grade is about right to start on bedrock. And bedrock is that basic linear progression. That's the amateur progression from old CrossFit football, the one that we've tried and tested and used. And, tens of thousands of athletes have gotten really strong on that program. That's our first stop. They follow bedrock. It might last 8 months or might last 10, 12, who knows, somewhere. We've seen it last longer, somewhere in that year. From there, we have to make a decision once they finish up bedrock. What kind of training do they want to do? What are they trying to do? Do they need to put on more muscle, larger cross-sectional size of a muscle, something like a Jack Street, or something like a Field Strong, which is fostering and developing more athleticism?
Yeah.
So we kind of all started bedrock, and then there becomes a fork in the road. And then they have to decide which road they need to go to. And a lot of athletes periodize back and forth to it. If they needed a more specific program for high school sports, there's probably one for it that looks like a 3-day-a-week, full-bodied kind of plyometric base, a lot of jumping and a lot of movement stuff that we have in that program, but isn't necessarily going to be specific for like one of our team offerings because it's just not really our market.
All right. Well, moving away from programming for a second, and probably something that I've thought about a lot through my lifting experience was your thoughts on utilizing lifting aids, belts, straps, knee wraps, gloves, weightlifting shoes when training youth athletes.
No gloves. I'm not a big glove guy.
Ronnie Coleman will
no gloves. I don't have a problem with belts. But I think that there's a certain point at which you can wear the belt. Yeah. It's about anything over 80%. So I do all my warm-up sets without a belt, and I only put my belt on for the top sets. So like once the weight gets heavy, and people are like, how do I know when it's heavy? And it's like, you know what the heavy is. Yeah. If I get underneath the weight, and I can start thinking like as I'm like, I get underneath the weight and I start squatting and I'm thinking about the Jordan Peterson talk. If I get underneath the weight and I stand up and think, oh, fuck, this is heavy. I'm going to kill myself. I better fucking lock in. That's how I know it's heavy. When all of a sudden my mind flips from like this, focusing on a million things that I have to do today to all of a sudden the singular focus of survival. That's how I know it's time to get heavy.
Right.
So I like belts. I don't like real thick, heavy belts. So we've been using a lot of breath belts. And I also do have a thicker kind of more powerlifting style belt that I do like. Straps, if you have small hands, I think straps are necessary for you to learn to pull. But I do think you need to develop grip strength. And the only problem with developing grip strength, if you have small hands, is you're just going to have to suffer through it. Is there an issue where all of a sudden ham strength becomes a limiting factor for strength? 100%.
Right.
But that's why we're always real big on training grip until all of a sudden grip becomes a limiting factor. Then we'll use straps. So I don't have an issue with that. Knee wraps. I made a mistake pretty early on when I started lifting weights. The old power lifter we trained with was a single ply wrap power lifter. So we started wrapping our knees at anything over 135. So, I don't know. I saw everybody wrapping knees. So we just started wrapping knees. I'm like doing like 135 warm-ups with my knees wrapped. It was stupid.
Right.
And I think what it did is it smashed my patella, and I think some of the patellar tendonitis I had. And also I didn't really get as strong as I was until I threw the wraps away and started squatting without them. So is there a place for wraps? Yeah, probably, but it's not in a everyday training environment. Like, hey, if all of a sudden I'm going to start trying to test some 1RMs or maybe go to a powerlifting meet or something specific, I should probably throw some wraps on and at least get comfortable squatting with them, because it is a different squat movement.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden you're going to, once the knees are wrapped, it's a different position opposed from unwrapped.
Well, you're pushing against the wraps, right? And you just said it, like 1 rep max. Whenever I think about these aids, these lifting aids, whenever I'm training, is always to increase my 1 rep max. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's something to aid me in achieving a load that I haven't done before. But in particular, because the question asks for youth athletes, I don't think youth athletes really know what it is to lift their maximum yet. No. So I would even shy away from having them train a 1 rep max all the time.
Well, we don't even have beginners. Yeah. I mean, you have to have a very efficient central nervous system to lift a heavy 1RM, and just an unadapted, untrained individual is not going to have that nervous system. Mm-hmm. So for kids, I would just throw it out. Chalk is fine. Weightlifting shoes, I think, are extremely beneficial for a lot of athletes. And the reason being is one of the tenets that we know for sprinting, right, is going to be positive shin angle in the knee over the toe. Mm-hmm. For a lot of athletes, they lack dorsiflexion and flexibility in the ankles. So by blocking the heel up ever so slightly, we can get more positive shin angle, and the knee can go over the toe. I had terrible tendonitis in my knee in high school. And I think it came from 2 things, 1 or 3 things. 1, I ran hurdles, and I hooked my foot, and I drove my knee into the ground, and that kind of blew it up. We were putting knee wraps on, and we were also taught to sit back really far with vertical shins. So when I got to Cal, I still had that tendonitis I was dealing with, and it wasn't until my strength coach Todd Rice came in, and he's like, "You need to fix this shit." And I was like, "Well, how do I fix it? I can't get it to go away." And he's like, "You need to strengthen your knee." So we threw out the flat shoes and we started wearing Ole shoes. And all of a sudden, within a few months of squatting with my knee over my toe, my quad got stronger, my knee gets stronger, and the patellar tendonitis disappeared. Yeah. So I think there's benefit to it. So I don't have an issue. I like lifting shoes. I don't mind straps if you have small hands and a weak pull. Other than that, no knee wraps, no gloves. And if you want to wear a belt, that's up to you. Yeah, and the gloves. Just please don't pull up to LA Fitness in gloves. Gloves are weird, man. One of the arguments is like, oh, you wear gloves when you're playing football. I'm like, I wear receiver gloves. But at the end of the day, I don't know, dude. I like, think about the dudes you've seen wearing gloves at the gym. I remember I see these bodybuilders that used to wear like workman gloves. Yeah. And I was like, the last generation of glove wearers, they're always the dude over 50, still in a stringer. Yeah. All the skin sagging and doing cheek curls. Vallejo belt. And Vallejo belt. And the auto mix shoes. Yes. And the long pants. Yeah. Because they don't want to show off their untrained legs. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Fuck all that. Question number 4. What's the ideal power athlete program for muscle building, and does it vary based on age? Any common obstacles to watch for? I think we kind of answered the first one. But any common obstacles? The program that's really designed for mass muscle and for the greatest form of hypertrophy that I've seen within training programs is Jack Street. Mm-hmm. Even though we have people putting on muscle and really just doing bodybuilding S movements to failure, mechanical tension, mechanical failure, and just base varying on age. Yeah. I think if you get through bedrock and you've done what you need to do on bedrock, I think jumping into Jack Street, I think where people make a mistake is they don't realize Jack Street is an intermediate to advanced program. Mm-hmm. I think there's a whole preparatory phase of some other programs to get you to Jack Street. And then I think that there's a kind of a expiration on Jack Street where all of a sudden you might be a little bit old to recover. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of volume. So normally for people that are a little bit older, I'll cut it down to 4 days a week, even though it's programmed for 6. There's a lot of trunk and accessory and whatever. I tell people just do the 4 main days, try to, really just bias recovery. And if you're feeling weak and beat up and your numbers aren't getting better and you're feeling smashed, then you might be just past the point where maybe it's just too much volume. I try to make sure that there's a good balance of volume and intensity, but at the end of the day, there's no way to get the effect without doing the work. Should I be eating more if I'm on Jack Street? Yeah, I think everybody should be eating a high protein diet. I think Jack Street on caloric restriction is not a lot of fun. which I've done. That's an interesting piece. And you know something about being hungry, and we've all dealt with that. Like it's like you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and being hungry. And I just don't know how to like get super lean and really like lose a ton of weight without being hungry unless you take Ozempic.
Well, I really loved that you prefaced that when I started the carb cycling routine that you put me on. Yeah. Because you were like, dude, this is me. You sent me 2 photos. You sent me a photo of you, not fat and happy, but just like not as lean. I think you were like 13 to 15%. Yeah. And then you sent me a photo of you at 9%.
Oh, it was like 7 and change.
7 and change. Yeah. And then you're like, dude, this is what I look like. I'm like, whoa, that looks awesome. I was like, I also was hungry all the time and wanted to crush tacos at any possible moment. So do you want this mentally for yourself?
And I was super cold. That was another issue I was running into.
That happened.
Like I slept with like 3 blankets on my bed and I was cold all the time where I was like, I feel like my wife. I'm like, I'm going to put on a sweater. And I'm like, I just was cold all the time.
Yeah. Couldn't go anywhere without a jacket.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like I used to wear t-shirts and shorts everywhere. Then all of a sudden I'm putting on pants and I'm like, what's the weather like? Is it going to be cold out? And my wife's like, are you out of your mind? I'm like, I'm going to take a jacket in case I get a little cold.
Shit.
She's like, God damn, put some body weight on, motherfucker.
Number 5, tips for achieving impressive vascular arms and the corresponding power athlete program to follow. Anybody that hangs out with John for more than a week is going to have bigger arms.
Well, we do train arms. That's one thing that like, I've never had, that's not true. I did have somebody once to be like, hey, how come we don't train arms more often? And I was like, I've never taken anything so personal in my life. I was like, we train arms constantly. I think vascularity has to do a few things. Vascularity has to do with a good portion of genetics. It also has to do with leanness and body fat. And I also think it has to do with salt. So I think if you are hydrated, you have enough salt, you're fairly lean, and you have some fairly decent genetics, you're going to have some like pretty good arm veins. Like I got pretty good arm veins, but I've always genetically had pretty good arm veins. But also, when I was, younger and fatter, I don't know if the same vascularity I had. So I think it's just a function of probably a little bit of genetics, a little bit of leanness, a little bit of training, and a little bit of salt.
Yeah. And just pumping those arms up.
Yeah, no, you got to have an arm pump. Why would we do this if I didn't have jacked arms?
Yeah.
Like that just seems weird to me. Like where I see like big dudes and they have spaghetti arms, to quote Arnold. He's like, look at Louis, he's got spaghetti arms.
Yeah, more people would be doing Olympic weightlifting if they had jacked arms. But like, some of the best Olympic weightlifters in the world look like they're just,
but then you see
torso and legs.
But then you see like Piros Dimas.
Right.
It's fucking shredded. And you see the Chinese lifters are all fucking diesel up. They all got traps and shoulders and they look good.
Yeah.
But then, you're talking about, like I sent you that video the other day of Razazadeh.
Yeah.
God damn it, he was athletic.
Yeah.
So fast. He was like a little dancing bear.
And he never had a problem with the clean. Never had a problem with the clean. Could clean, I think in training, it was reported to clean 270 regularly.
Wow.
It was just the jerk. So
what was his ratio? Like how tall was he? Was he 6 feet?
Not even 5'10".
But he's 5'10", what, like 340?
Yeah, something like that.
So
340 on a lean day.
What is it? Lasha,
yeah. Telechadze.
Yeah, he's 400, but he's also 6'6".
Yeah, he's rare air, right? Because now we finally have a big guy, kind of like a Hafthorne Bjornsson was in strongman, where you have a really tall guy that's able to move weight really fast and is super strong.
Yeah.
But this happens with all supers, like super heavyweights and weightlifting, where they have a ton of success and then they just the belly starts creeping up on them. And I feel like the death of a super is just when the belly gets too big. Happened with Alexeyev way back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's happening with Lasha now, where like there's this pressure mounting of him getting the 500 kilo total. It's like,
I think he can do it.
He can do it. It's just like, it's a ticking timer. It's just like, man, please stay lean enough. Please stay
Well, he needs a
enough.
270, 230, which I think he can do. He's done it in training. Yeah. I just know he gets paid for world records and PRs.
Right. Just like Alexeyev. Alexeyev was the first guy to really game that because the Soviet Union would give him a bonus every time he broke the record. So he would just break the record by a half kilo or a kilo every single time.
Same thing with the Olympic sprinters. That was the same deal with.
Was it?
Yeah, they get set for world records. So if all of a sudden you go out, you just have to run a little bit faster than last time, and so that was the Usain Bolt effect, which is crazy. Seeing is that now you have people that are running damn near close to that. When he came out and smashed that 100, Like, and it looks so effortless. People are like, oh God, now we've entered it. I mean, but you're talking about the same thing. Look how tall he was in comparison.
Yeah.
What's he, 6'4", and the next guy was 5'10"? And they show his stride length, stride frequency, and his arm swing and all the mechanics. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Question number 6. Can you provide a detailed analysis of upcoming cycles in powerathlete programs such as Shadow, PAMC, French contrast, and triphasic, and their specific adaptation goals?
Ooh.
Loaded.
It's like 5 whole podcasts in one.
Right.
So the Shadow is one of the power athlete programs that's based upon some of the Mike Metzner and Dorian Yates training of one set to failure. The issue becomes most untrained individuals don't understand, and I'll use the term RPE, which is rate of perceived effort, that to really work for those type of like one set to failure type programs. And it's not just one set to failure, it's multiple warm-up sets. I mean, it's not like Arnold or Yates went in and just picked one, hey, I'm going to load 405 on the bent over row and just do it for as many as I can and walk away.
Yeah.
Now he would go 135, 225. If you look at it, there's a ton of ascending volume getting up there, but he's working up to one max intensity set. So I've always trained, I've trained like this my entire life. We've always worked up to just one maximal effort. And if we didn't hit the number I wanted or I didn't get the result I wanted, I would add a second set. But there was never like multiple max effort sets. I would kind of like feeders, like get up to where I wanted. I'd hit the number and I'd be like, hey, I'm going to hit this weight for this amount of reps. If I get it or I don't, then I might decide a second one. So that's what the Shadow is based on. It's always going to be based on most of the programs, especially in Jack Street, are going to be, broken into usually push pull, legs, uppers, kind of pulls. Like if I'm going to do some form of heavy pulling, it's going to be on back day. There's going to be a lot of overhead pressing, like a lot of accessory with seated dumbbells. We use a lot of close grips. I do like floor presses for the mere fact that I can take a stretch shortening cycle out of the bottom of the movements. We do a lot of overhead pulling, a lot of H pulls, a lot of V pulls. But yeah, that one set to failure. I do use a lot of the post-activation potentiation training in a lot of the programs. So we're going to do something heavy, something dynamic. I don't like sitting around a ton.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of like doing a set and resting 3 minutes. So what I like to do is do a set and then go do something that's a corresponding movement and then rest. So I'm always looking for economy of time. How much work can I get done in a given time? So that's the Shadow. The PMAC is the Power Athlete Metabolic Conditioning Cycles that if you go back and you listen to the podcast we did with Boyd Epley, it's based on the metabolic conditioning cycles that were called the Nebraska circuits. We did them in college with Todd Rice. I adapted them over. They were on the old CrossFit football page, and we do that in Field Strong. The version that I do, French contrast, uses post-activation potentiation. We'll do that on Field Strong. I but really just heavily influenced by my good friend Cal Dietz. He sent me a triphasic program and asked me, hey, could you figure out how to do this in a garage environment without world-class spotters and all the fancy equipment? So I ended up kind of field testing one and then testing it on the programs. And so it uses eccentric, concentrics, and isometrics. And we use that kind of different pieces. I'll run cycles of that also in Dragon Slayer, which you guys are presently focusing on eccentrics. Everything is designed to continue to drive adaptation within a bigger picture. It's not as if there's just like, okay, you do this one cycle and you do this. There's actually a huge macro cycle of what I want to accomplish that year. And then I'm working every program to kind of balance into the volume intensity and I'm measuring. I have more data points than anybody else on the fucking planet for this stuff.
Yeah.
And what we're looking to do is use these in real time to foster and develop athleticism. I've not only... The one interesting thing, especially with the Dragon Slayer, because you guys are presently doing it, I get to see what you guys do in the weight room, but I also get to see what you guys do on the mat, and I get the reports of how you guys are doing, and I get to see you guys do in contest.
Yeah.
So is it helping you guys be better at the given sport? At the end of the day, we can make all of the progress in the weight room, but at the end of the day, if you're not better on the mat, was the program truly effective? And that, to me, has always been a greater barometer or marker, whatever you want to call it, for the programs, is the program eliciting the response at which it's being used? If people are following Jack Street and they're not getting more jacked and not putting on more muscle, the amount of like pictures and DMs and tags I get into people that are following, thousands that are following Jack Street are like hundreds in a single day, and everybody's fucking more piped up and everybody's stronger, hitting PRs. And so that's how I know the program is headed in the right direction. When all of a sudden I just get tagged at 3 a.m. in some weird shirtless selfie by some dude flexing up, it just says Jack Street, I know we're on the right fucking path.
Which, by the way, I'm getting a run off of because now I'm associated with the power athlete cult.
Nice.
So
nice.
People are saying like, dude, I'm following pop, 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 pop. And now I've got, just see a forearm picture.
Well, just wait until you're randomly at some place and some dude rolls up on you and it's like, what's up, Arash? Power athlete. And he throws you a fist and you're like, oh man, here we are.
I forgot the salute.
There's a great story, and I'm not going to say the name, but if you guys are smart, you might figure out who it was. But a former teammate of mine who lived in LA was headed downtown. He had like a pretty cool van that we could all go out in. So the van was full of people. They went out to some club in LA and they were driving home and he got pulled over. And he hadn't been drinking, but I think he might have had like a drink at dinner.
Right.
So he gets pulled over and he's got a bunch of drunks and a bunch of idiots screaming in the van. He's like, dude, shut the fuck up, dude.
Helpful bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's late at night. We're in LA. We're on the 405. Like this could go badly. And, like you never know in LA. The guy comes over, license and registration, hands him that, looks at it, goes back to the car, comes back a few minutes later and he goes, you were teammates of John Wellborn? And he's like, yeah. And the guy looks at him and he's like, tell him what's up. And he just put up a fist and he was like, follow power athlete and CrossFit football before that, like basically like, you're good, just go on your way. And so I got this text message like, what's going on here? Who are these people? And I was like, you remember like Tyler Durden with like the Fight Club people, like we are the people that serve your food. I'm like, that's power athlete, like unknown people in random places that follow the training program that we've run into are too many to name. So it's been extremely beneficial for that. Who would have thought that helping people with dope training workouts would have resulted in positive goodwill?
It needs to put a strong disclaimer that the power athlete will not get you out of legal battles. Number 7, how does power athlete programming cater to training for women? Are reps, sets, and calorie considerations the same? Why does conditioning follow strength in power athlete programs?
It doesn't. Sometimes we do conditioning before. There's conditioning on different days. So for a program like Johnny Wad, it still follows the same CrossFit football template where there's strength and conditioning. We're doing multiple workouts where we want somebody to be strong, but we're still prefacing some of the conditioning stuff. But they're not really conditioning. They're called supersets. I just call them WADs. So we've always done supersets. And the reason being was, we trained, we lift our weights. I want to fucking get a pump and I want to get out of there because I don't want to spend 3 hours in the gym. So all I started doing was just taking all my accessory work and just smashing them into supersets or giant sets as we call them.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of specifically catering to women, I don't look at like women only programs. I don't think that women physiologically, even though they are different than men, do I realize that women can lift a higher percentage of their 1RM for more reps? 100%. Is that the reason that men are stronger than women? Well, no, men just have a more efficient nervous system so they can lift a heavier 1RM. Mm-hmm. But this is only for trained individuals. My wife cycles between Johnny Wad, Johnny Bod, and Grindstone. So she'll do 6-8 weeks of Johnny Wad with a little bit of Johnny Bod, and then she does Grindstone, and her like lady crew group of like riders, they all cycle back between those two programs.
Which, by the way, they're stronger than ever. Every time I walk in there,
they're
on a given Monday, I'm like, Jesus, there's a 45 on the squat now.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
So they're making a ton of progress there. And I wouldn't say necessarily there needs to be any difference, right? Because the human body is the human body in terms of the movements that it's capable of executing. It's just the level of intensity.
What I did with Power Athlete is we developed a blueprint of athleticism, right? There's the definition of athleticism, the ability to seamlessly and effortlessly combine primal movement patterns through space to accomplish a known or novel task. Mm-hmm. And there's the blueprint of athleticism, which looks like the primal movements with the X, Y, and Z axis and the pushes and the pulls, vertical and horizontal. And everything is about moving through space and being obsessed with movement, not movements. Mm-hmm. So that X, that hinge, the Y, and the Z for the lower body, I think in today's market, especially with like female-based programs, they have to have a peach in them and be all about the booty because everybody wants the booty. The only problem is if the booty doesn't match the thigh meat, it looks weird. So you see a lot of these girls that have worked a ton to overdevelop the glutes, but I just don't. I think you got to have the thigh has got to match the glute, or it looks strange to me. So I also am highly focused on hamstrings. Mm-hmm. I think if a girl has well-developed hamstrings, that's a great indicator that she's well trained. So I saw a lot of times the girls had, pretty good sized butt, big quads, no hamstring always kind of bothered me. I also think girls are also very nervous to do a lot of pulling because they don't want to have overdeveloped traps or shoulders. But I think all that does is it just frames the body better. Right. So I train everybody as an athlete, and I believe women are athletes. Do they need special allowances? To some extent, but I think it's more modifications. So I know for a lot with my wife and her ladies, she's always asking like, oh, what about this modification or what about this and this and this? But it's more have to do with anthropometrical ratios or just something different, but they need to be strong in their trunk. The other issue too is women are going to be dramatically stronger and be able to activate their trunk better. Like if you ever seen the women do dead bugs, they can do them all day. Right. You watch a bunch of dudes do dead bugs and they're just dying. So I think that I have to challenge their dead bug dramatically more than I have to challenge the guys.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And also just one example of why, maybe because you call them giant sets, but maybe a pure conditioning, for instance, like getting on the assault bike or something like that. I mean, if you're doing strength, a strength piece of the workout, and you need to coordinate yourself to be able to back squat or deadlift, you're not exactly going to have all your faculties when you're burnt out from. Yeah. I think we tried that one day.
Well, what we have, we've tested everything. Yeah. I think that there is a usefulness in developing both anaerobic and aerobic capacity for strength. So if we do something heavy and there's something like on rep max effort day, we're usually going to do some form of intensity, whether it be swings or on the bike or anything that we do is intensity based. It's going to be short with a high level of intensity. Anything that looks like kind of conditioning, I'm going to pull farther away from the strength just because I don't want to try to confuse it. I mean, I know why we're lifting weights for central nervous system efficiency, compensatory acceleration, speed. And what I don't need to do, especially when you do like a lot of kind of like endurance work, that's kind of longer in duration. Mm-hmm. The problem is to survive that, you have to have a conversion of fast twitch to slow twitch muscle fibers. So now we're trying to train two masters. So I kind of separated a day. So if we come in on a Friday and it's, density day and we're going to do something hard and heavy, I'm going to allow that hard work to kind of permeate. And I'm not going to go into like a whole bunch, like we're not going to jump on the bike and ride for 30 minutes. Yeah. That's going to be done 4 hours before, 4 hours after. And that's the zone 2 stuff that I have you guys do away from me just because I'm not, I shouldn't have to fucking be there while you guys ride the bike at 130 degree or 130 beats a minute.
Just want to see you. I want you to watch me lean up though. I want you to watch me shred. Yeah. Number 8. Which power athlete program would you recommend for tactical operators and those aspiring to be, and what's the reasoning behind it?
So we have a program, the Holistic Athlete Movement Readiness Program, which is called the HAMMER program, which stems from the program that we designed for the U.S. Army. So when we went in and we're doing military contracting and we're going through this process to try to implement power athlete systems for the 18th Airborne Corps, which was for about 90,000 troops, we had different kind of varying degrees of program. The whole program was called HAMMER, but we had one kind of tip of the spear, kind of like the flagship tip of the spear operator-esque program. And then we had other programs similar to Bedrock and 3 Day a Week and these kind of, and then a austere program. So that really tip of the spear program that we had designed for the U.S. Army ended up just being morphed into HAMMER. So what happened was I needed to start selling that program on the commercial market. So we had price justification in our contract. So even though that program was designed for the Army and we've used it for tier 1 operators, I needed to sell it commercially. So there was a price point. So when we ended up doing our contracting, I could show them price justification. Mm-hmm. Hey, we're writing this program for 90,000. We sell this program for $30. This is the price justification. Obviously, you get the Army's discount, but this is what the price justification was. So that's how HAMMER came about. Also, there were a ton of people that were trying to secret squirrel programs with a dedicated run template. So people were like, well, if I follow Jack Street, but I only lift weights 2 days a week and I run. So all these people were just trying to hack in a run template into a power athlete program. And we saw this happen for years. So instead of just giving people modifications, I just designed a program that was strength based that had a run template designed into it, which was the HAMMER program. Mm-hmm. So that's the one.
Nice.
But surprisingly, most of the guys we work with, the guys from DevGru that we work with, a lot of them don't follow HAMMER. They really like Field Strong and they love Jack Street. And for the other guys, a lot of them like Johnny Wad. So it's kind of interesting. Guys follow grindstone, some guys follow hammer, but they just, they want to be jacked, they want to train, and, they have the flexibility to try them all. But a lot of them like Jack Street.
Yeah, maybe it's just because they want to
because people want to bang weights.
They want to bang weights and feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes, it's not, it goes back to the health question we had earlier. It's
look good, feel good, be good.
Look good, feel good, be good. Yeah. It doesn't always have to be, hey, I'm doing exactly what needs to be done. Number 9, for individuals without a specific sport or activity goal, any advice on goal setting for general improvement and the corresponding Power Athlete program?
So Power Athlete has a really robust Discord. Once you join Power Athlete training programs, so you get access to our Discord, which is like if those of you guys who don't know Discord, it's almost like a messaging group that's universal for all the programs. All my Power Athlete certified coaches are in there. We have thousands of people in it. And one of the things that comes up quite often is goal setting, and more importantly, what am I training for? Which goes back to the original tagline for Power Athlete, which is, what are you training for? Mm-hmm. Which was a question I asked almost 100 times a day on email. I would get, hey, here's who I am. This is what I'm looking for. The first question I always respond is, what are you training for?
What's your aim?
Yeah. What are you trying to do? What do you want to do with this? Right. And if it's just general health, okay, then what are the markers that you know for health? What is your KPIs for fitness? What is your KPI for strength? If you're looking at those key performance indicators, which we use in the business and whatnot, I go back to, you have to know what you want out of this. So one of the tenets for authenticity, and I'm still working on that talk for Sornex, but one of the tenets of authenticity and one of the foundations is truth. You have to know who you are and what you're trying to do to be authentic. And authenticity doesn't exist without honesty and truth. So and I think the reason that on the internet and social media and all these fitness influencer fucking nauseum it's happening, the reason that it feels weird, or more importantly, it feels weak, is because it's inauthentic, because it's not truthful. Mm-hmm. These people are getting up and they're basically painting a lie. And they're, using, media and levers and ad buys and all this other fucking algorithms to try to push a false narrative. So one of the keys on the Discord is goal setting, and what do you want to do? Whether it's you want to come in and set PRs, if you want to, look better naked. If you want to be in shape, if you want to do something. But we got into a discussion on, what does it mean to be an athlete? If I just come train in the gym and I do an athletic form of training, does that make me an athlete, or am I just being athletic? So I think to be an athlete, you have to do something that involves some form of competition. And if you go back to the root word of the word athlete, I think it's athlon, which is Greek in prize. So it's competing for something that has a prize. If I go to jiu-jitsu and I roll, am I getting a medal or a little white piece of tape after class? No, right? Maybe, but that's not why I'm there. The prize is my own athletic development, my competition. Am I feeling the fire of my competition? Am I going to the gym, am I training? And the reason I'm getting on the bike and doing all the aerobic work is because I don't want to gas when I go to jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. So adding something to train for has been one of the greatest things that I've found, because I really struggled with it. I really did. When I retired from the NFL, all I ever wanted to do was play football.
Yeah.
And when I retired from it, I was mad about it. And I fucking made all these excuses. And it wasn't until I went to Craig Douglas's course and got my guard passed and got fucking killed with a sim gun that I had this moment of realization that I'm not the person I thought I was. And even though I'm a pretty good fighter with my hands, and I feel 99.9% of the people I encounter on the street, I will fucking smash through the earth. Here was a situation where I didn't. Mm-hmm. And even though I did well in that course, there was one moment where I was stuck on my back that I get my guard passed and I got killed. And that was a huge blow to not a fragile ego, but just a real blow to the ego, where I was driving home and I realized, dude, I'm not the person I thought I was. Could I make the excuse, I'm not good on my back, I'll never be on my back? But what if I am on my back? I'm not prepared for this situation. All the training I've done, everything that I've done prepared me up until this point, and I didn't meet the standard. So now I have to humble myself and go learn this.
And this is why I don't necessarily discourage beginners in any sport to not compete. I encourage competition, because I think it holds yourself accountable, because there are no real there are no real times in today's world where you have to be held accountable for the things that you've done over a period of time. So in the example of jiu-jitsu, because that's the world I live in right now, some people say, oh, well, you don't necessarily need to, within your first month, need to go to a competition. But I always tell the people who join, like within 3 months, like if there's an in-house tournament, like if we're doing something in-house and you're competing, like go do it. Go test yourself in an environment where you're not comfortable, because otherwise all the actions you take every day will not have a day to shine for you.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you feel that, all the effort and all the sacrifices that you make don't have a result. They don't produce a result. And then you don't feel that you are validated in your sacrifice. And I think that whether it's a jiu-jitsu competition or, the rise of like this, have you heard of the High Rocks race? Mm-hmm. It's like this new fitness thing.
Do you have to fight?
No, it's not. There's no mud involved. It's all shiny gym equipment and stuff and like sled pushes and things like that. But it involves a race. It's like basically a Murph, I think. I think you do a set of exercises, then you run like, a long lap, and then you do the exercise again.
So kind of like CrossFit?
Stop it. I don't want to cause a controversy, my friend.
Pizza by any other name, still pizza.
But anyway, it's like, now people are like, hey, I want to get in shape for this. So
people need something to train for. And
for.
the thought of not being able to hold the standard. I mean, like if you go to a jits deal and you get smashed, and I know this has happened to everybody, and I know it's happened to you. You travel far and you all excited with, hey, I'm going to be on the winner's circle, and you end up losing in the first round.
Dude.
And while that's a fucking heavy sting, that bad taste never leaves your mouth. So then every time you go, you make sure that I'm not getting knocked out the first round.
John, I'm first team All-American in long flights and getting smashed in the first round. I flew like 18 hours to Russia just to get smashed by this giant dude who's been doing the sport for 20 years. I mean, he was about 100 pounds heavier than me, and just got off the plane, got to, actually it was Belarus, and the guy I went up against was an absolute mountain. And then we shook hands, went to go, grabbed my belt, and then took 3 steps and just threw me and then threw his 350-pound body on top of me. And then after that day, I was like, I just remember looking up at the lights like, all right,
how did I get here? Do you remember in so How I Met Your Mother, where all of a sudden Ted's like, so how did we get here?
I remember walking up to the mat actually thinking about my grandma and her being like, just go have fun. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to lose this match.
No, it's I think sometimes people come in with a, hey, this is what I'm training for. And then sometimes people need the community to help them. And what I was bringing up about the Discord is that Discord has been extremely robust to helping people figure out what they want to train for, and more importantly, what their KPIs are for health and success, and like what this means, or how am I going to use this training in a meaningful way? Yeah,
because some people are really actually shy about their ability, right? They don't know exactly where to push themselves. And if somebody can recognize, even if casually they recognize like, hey man, you're getting in pretty decent shape. Yeah. Have you ever thought about competing? Like that conversation, that little question of, hey, have you thought about trying this? Have you make great kebabs. Have you thought about making a business out of this?
I do love kebabs.
But I think that community piece in the Discord will be tremendously helpful, just to see where you stack yourself up in the world.
Yep.
Good one. Is muscle soreness a reliable indicator of a successful workout?
No. Muscle soreness has nothing to do with muscle growth.
Yeah.
It's just a lack of recovery. So, I mean, I think, is it a good indicator? We did a bunch of heavy half fields the other day at like 6 a.m. And I ended up with like the weirdest upper hamstring, like hip, like upper quad soreness, to the point where I felt like I was riding a horse as I was walking yesterday. And like, that's more of an indicator that I need to do more of that movement, because if I got sore like that, like I just haven't been doing them.
After the Hatfields yesterday, I was walking around and I actually felt stronger. So if anything, it's that the neurological adaptation was like, hey, I'm able to handle more load. Yeah. So I don't necessarily feel muscle soreness.
Oh, I did. It was bad.
Yeah. Is training to failure crucial for progression? And how can one safely achieve this when training alone?
Yeah. I think you have to pull close. I think if you're constantly leaving reps in the tank, you're leaving gains on the mat and in the weight room.
You said the mat.
I know, the mat. I mean, because it's true. And I think about failure in jiu-jitsu as such an interesting, integral part of it. I've learned more by trying something new and getting I was laughing thinking about rolling with Noah. I literally grabbed his legs and I was going to try to like do this body lock, and he just like wrapped his arm around me until he loop choked me. And I was like, note to self, don't do that. And he even looked at me. He's like, why did you do that? Like, you could totally expose your neck. And I'm like, yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah, he was like, I am Groot.
Well, and he's like, if you're going to body lock me, it has to be on my waist, not, but like I was going to try to scoop his legs and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And so I think like you go in, and this is something I think in jits is I'm always trying to try new things. Mm-hmm. And what I get frustrated on, and I call this the Emilio factor, where he's got one move. He tries to go butterfly guard to shoulder crunch and then flip you over and then try to smother me with his fat belly. So he has like, he literally
Don't hate on my boy like that.
I'm not hating on him. I just told Emilio, you gotta like, and he's like, I'm going to keep doing this move until you stop this move. And I'm like, you got one move, right? You got to chip, you dip, and that's it. And so I'm constantly trying to work on like all these different things I want to do. I want to be good at this and this. And in my head, I've kind of built this, like, I'm going to try all these things. Mm-hmm. And then you get people that are like, I got one thing. I'm going butterfly guard to a shoulder crunch, flip you over, and then try to smother you.
Yeah.
The mother's milk, to quote Papa de leche.
Leche de papi.
Yeah, leche de papi.
Yeah, as Tim Kennedy likes to call it, actually. But I guess in the weight room, I mean, there's a number of ways, right? You can have like catch bars.
Yeah, so I mean, there's ways to we train to failure. I'm not real big on training to failure on the back squat with a straight bar by yourself, unless you're fairly skilled at ditching the bar. Mm-hmm. I like safety, but then even going to failure with the safety squat bar without a spotter is fucking dicey as shit, because there's no way to ditch that thing unless you have squat stands or hooks or something, way to do it, or.
Yeah.
So I like to choose movements, and especially with programs like the Shadow, I tended to use what I called like heavy compound movements to kind of prime, and then the failure movements were things that were easily dipped. Like if you're doing heavy Bulgarian split squats with dumbbells, you can work those to failure, and if you hit failure, you just ditch the dumbbells.
Right.
So I use a lot of dumbbells or other movements to try to get to failure. If you have access to machines, and that's why machines are so good for hypertrophy, because they create stability. When you take stability out of the factor and you can just focus on pushing and eccentrics and concentrics and working towards failure, you have a greater chance of hypertrophy to some extent. Because I know, like, for example, we have a hammer leg press and we use it from some volume, and sometimes it works into the training program. But like, I don't feel stronger under the squat. Like if I squat heavy, I can leg press the world. If I leg press the world, I can't squat heavy. It's
right.
Like, it's a one-way street that doesn't go back the other way.
Yeah, but the safety comes from finding movements that stabilize, or finding machines or movements that are able to provide stability so that you can just focus on doing the work.
Yeah, that's why we use the hammer incline, and I have enough like machines that we use where I can kind of work towards failure, like the hamstring curl and some of the other movements that we do, the cables, so that we can work towards a lat pull down.
Mm-hmm. All right, last one in the training sphere. Controversial to some, and then gaining a lot of popularity, is the cold showers and plunge pools have gained attention for recovery and performance enhancement. In your opinion, are they overrated or underrated?
I have showered in cold water every single day of my life since forever. So when I get in, I usually shower. Like if the shower's hot, I'll shower for a few seconds, but I always turn on the cold water. I've never really looked at it as a recovery thing, as a performance thing. Just for me, it's for mental clarity. I just like the cold water. I feel like in the morning, especially, like I would never take a cold shower before bed. I'd take a warm shower. I always felt like that helped me sleep better. But in the morning, I take cold showers. The research is kind of all over the place, but it's pretty well established that cold water blunts hypertrophy. So if you're training for hypertrophy and you're looking for protein synthesis, cold water immersion blunts hypertrophy. So it's not necessarily going to assist in hypertrophy. If you're doing it for other reasons, or Are there better, are you doing it for fat loss or whatever it looks like, or just mental clarity? I know Joe Rogan, I listen to him. He does it like first thing in the morning. He gets up and then he lets his body warm, and, he thinks it helps him in a lot of different ways.
Well, his life's not really that hard anymore. So he's even said it himself. He does it because it's the hardest thing he does all day. So
yeah, he just sits around, counts his money, and then he shows up to his comedy show where everybody screams and yells, and it's just so excited with him making hand job jokes.
And he recognizes that. He's like, dude, I need to do something fucking terrible to myself
every day.
So I got to get into this cold water for 10 minutes.
And he doesn't do jits or anything anymore, does he? He basically rubber guarded his knees and hips away.
I don't think it was rubber guard. I think it's just.
Well, he was a 10th Planet guy though.
He did kickboxing as a youth, and then it was mostly meniscus. So I think he still trains, probably just does privates and hits the pads and stuff like that. But in general, I think
well, you got to do something hard. Like you got to have somebody choke you near consciousness at least a few days a week to just,
It's really the problem I have with it is the people that are religious about the cold water, and they're like, oh, dude, you got to get in here for 10 minutes every day. You got to do this hard thing. Yeah. I'm like, dude, I get suffocated from Mount by Victor Hugo. I'm fine. I've seen God this morning. I don't need ayahuasca.
I've had a young Brazilian, as he's choking the shit out of me, be like, "Oh, you're doing so good. I'm so happy to see you. I love you so much."
And then give me a tip afterwards, just if you did this would help you. I'm like, okay, great. You're the best guy in the world. I'm gonna do that. But I don't think people recognize that cold water is a great hangover cure. It wakes you up.
It is.
But in terms of recovery, the metabolic processes of recovery are actually related to inflammation. So like the tissue has to be inflamed for them to spark the muscle building process. It's also why we ice our knees when they're inflamed. It's to blunt the inflammation process.
If you want to do it,
yeah,
do it. Don't ask anybody's permission.
Right.
I don't ask anybody's permission to do anything. Stop asking permission. If you like getting in cold water and you think it helps you, then do it. Who cares if you spent $13,000 on a Morosa forage and now all of a sudden, the research comes out that it blunts hypertrophy. If you're happy doing it and it makes you a better version of you, then go do it. I'm all about you bettering yourself, and betterment and improvement. Lifting weights and training, all these things are bettering yourself. If getting into cold water, but if the reason you're doing it is because Andrew Huberman or Joe Rogan told you that you had to do it, you probably need to adjust a little bit and get into what we talked about, that thing with authenticity. Know who you are, and more importantly, establish truth and see where this fits into your paradigm.
Yeah.
Stop taking other people's word for it. And even if the research comes out and doesn't support it, if you feel like it makes you a better version of you, then fuck it. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like the analysis with paralysis, we did a ton of things that probably never panned out, but we did them because we wanted to do them, not because we thought that it was, the right thing to do, or, Huberman co-signed on it, or Rogan had a podcast about it, or, fucking somebody else wrote about it. Who cares?
But it's cool that they brought it to light. They brought it to light so you could try it out and see what's new.
Do I like saunas? Yes. I think saunas fucking rock.
Dmitry Klokov, he would go, he put that YouTube video out. He was just like, for Russian athletes, sauna one time a week, important. Like it's sauna one time a week, massage one time a month, mandatory.
Yeah.
Nutrition questions. How do you view dirty bulking in the context of muscle gain? Overrated or underrated? What's the recommended power athlete approach to bulking?
I am not a so the base of my pyramid is always going to be food quality. So there really is no dirty bulk in the muscle gain, body weight thing. Everything is always going to be, the number one is going to be food quality. So the bulking, we have a bulking protocol, nutrition template that we put together. It's going to look like more calories. You're going to eat a high protein diet, and it's going to be tougher than sitting down and smashing a pizza or some shitty stuff. Now, does that stuff have a place in everything? Of course. If you're within, bulking, and all of a sudden your buddy asks if you want to get a pizza and you say no, that's weird.
Don't be weird post that you made.
Don't be weird. But I also am obsessed with finding the best version of things. So I heard a rumor that there was the best pizza in Austin was not only some of the best pizza, but some of the best pizza in the country was in Austin. So I found out about it. I'd gone up and tried to go to this place. They were only open from 3 to 8. It's called Feral Pizza. It's up in North Austin. They're a food truck, and it's you show up you might like, if you don't order ahead of time, like before 3, there's a good chance that it's sold out for the day. So it's pretty highly coveted. So I ordered, I went up there and it did not disappoint. It was sourdough. They make all their fresh stuff. The guy said I asked him if it was gluten-free and he's like, it's not, but it's as close to gluten-free as anybody that's done pizza is ever going to find. I mean, and it was hands down some of the best pizza I've had. Did I crush a whole pizza? No. Did I have a piece? 100%. Does it fit within my diet? No. But at the end of the day, you can make a special allowance for something that's special. But I'm not a dirty bulk guy because at the end of the day, food quality is paramount above everything. I think once you establish food quality, then we can start kind of dialing up macros and, total caloric volume to figure out if we're bulking or leaning or whatever the fuck you want to do. But I think it all comes down to eating a very high quality food diet.
So does that kind of go in the direction of like the 80-20 rule? Like we're 80%.
Yeah, like I mean, I bet you 90% of my diet fits within a paleo diet, and there's probably 10% that looks like rice, and maybe I don't know, on the weekends, if we go somewhere, we're gonna have a drink or try something a little different, or maybe I'll occasionally have a piece of pizza or something. I mean, it just for the most part, I pretty much adhere to the diet that Rob Wolf and I discussed in 2008, 2009, and the one that Mauro Pasquale put me on in 2099. So I've always eaten a high protein diet based on real foods, one ingredient, and I cook most of my food. I like sourdough. I'll put some sourdough toast, maybe if I'm going to do a carb. But for the most part, 90% of all my foods fit within that paleo diet.
Next question is about diet soda. Diet soda's health effects. What's your perspective on the matter?
If you want to drink diet soda, I have no problem with you drinking diet soda. I like Zevias. If you guys have had Zevias, I think those are pretty good.
Yeah.
I think having a Zevia I don't get wrapped around the axle. If you want to drink diet soda, I personally don't like the taste of diet soda. And I think it has to do with aspartame or whatever is in it. I think the sugar tastes funny. So I just don't drink diet soda. But I think anything, like if you drink a 24 pack of diet soda every day, I would caution you against it just because anything in excess could be an issue. But I don't have a problem with diet soda. And I like Zevias.
Education questions. For someone passionate about fitness and looking to venture into coaching, what power athlete course would you recommend?
The methodology course. Yeah, hands down. I think the methodology course is our best offering. We're going through some rewrites in the book and some other things that I got to go back and change. And there's just a few little things, but I'm constantly tweaking it. So we just put out a new version, and there's always going to, every month we're always going back and changing things. So as people are going through the course, and I know they're probably like, oh, it's not fixed. No, but I mean, we pulled out some quizzes. We're adding more quizzes back. And so there's always this kind of constant tweaking. And I think we're like, I got to go back and refilm some things, but it's a constant work in action. And I think it's really, really solid, especially when paired with Bedrock. And then obviously the final point is coming in and basically testing for your Block 1, which is a certified power athlete coach.
And before the methodology, I think you were talking to me real quick about the foundation course.
Yeah.
What's that about?
That's more for like a personal trainer more so than a coach, just helping those people get on paper and just that kind of foundation. So if you're not ready exactly for the methodology, we kind of have a pre-course, which is at foundations, which is more like the personal trainer in the gym more so than the coach training teams.
Gotcha. And then last official question. What aspects of your training methodology interest you the most, and what's changed during your career?
I've always been impressed by people and athletes that can move heavy weights dynamically. So, compensatory acceleration, as mechanical advantage increases, so does speed. So I'm constantly focused on not how much I can move, but how dynamically I can move that weight. I really like Cal Dietz's approach with triphasic, where now all of a sudden you're focusing on, different muscle contractions for different ranges of motion, and then also seeing where people are strong with these different endpoints. I think that's fascinating. One of the components and one of the principles of power athlete is the principle of specificity, which comes down to, I need you to move well. Now, how you move and how you move under load, there's going to be determining factors on implement that we suggest or implement that allows you to move the best. Victor Hugo gets shut down with axial loading, then we're going to go to a belt squat. He's still able to do a heavy X-axis hinge, and then he uses that hinge to get very, very strong, which allows us to get back into other forms of training. So I'm really fascinated on getting people to move well under load and then fine-tuning them and the movements to find what allows them to move the best. So realizing that, all these guys train together, but everybody does a slightly different program based upon different limitations, strengths, and weaknesses, and being able to custom design. So that's the part that really interests me. But what's changed during your career? We just did a podcast on aerobic base with the USA Triathlon sprint coach, and we got into a lot of the lactate and just a lot of the zone 2 conditioning. That's something that's changed. Early on in my NFL career and through most of my training career, I thought zone 2 aerobic capacity was complete fucking bullshit. Lift heavy weights, sprint as fast as you can, and that's all you need to do. I didn't realize that I was leaving a massive energy system on the table, and if I could go back in time, I would shake that young John Wellborn and be like, you need to build an aerobic base, because not only is it going to help you recover in between plays, it's going to help you sleep better, and it's going to make for a better autonomic system. So I think that was a huge mistake on my part, and actually it was 22 Jack Street, the original program we did that kicked off Jack Street. I had to lose 10% of my body weight. And as we were lifting and training, I was eating, my body weight stalled. Like I just wasn't losing. So I started adding in. I was like, well, I just got to burn calories to try to get in caloric deficit. So I started doing 30 minutes of zone 2, just like my wife told me when she did her figure show. She's like, I need you to, basically 30 minutes, 120, 130 beats. So I did that 7 days a week. And all of a sudden I started PRing every lift. I ended up pulling 585 for 7 off of the floor, which I'd never pulled. I started PRing everything. I was losing weight. I was getting leaner. Everything came into focus. And I was like, oh, shit, I fucked this one up. Yeah. So that's why all the programs have some zone 2 recommendation. 4 hours before, 4 hours after for Dragon Slayer. There's entirely dedicated days that have trunk in this, and really just basically putting that into the programs and not just leaving it up to people's devices, but actually programming it and asking them to do it.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions to you. Was there any training dogma that you felt embarrassed that you fell into? But I guess that one's not all too embarrassing.
No, that one's not embarrassing. A little bit of the mixed modal stuff, with some of the CrossFit things. I mean, CrossFit was on to something with, their triplets and couplets. But what they were doing was a little different than the way I understood it with post-activation potentiation, which is the PAP training, which we use a lot, French contrast, obviously, use in the training programs. So by adding these triplets and couplets and these different kind of cross-patterning movements, like something heavy, something dynamic, we had always done that. CrossFit did it a little bit different, where they started pairing movements and then just absolutely curb stomping these fucking people. So I looked at it like, hey, instead of doing 30 clean and jerks and 30 football pulls, like, why don't we do 10 sets of 3, which was more similar to what we did, which was something, something heavy, something dynamic, something plyometric. We always used a ton of jumping. So if we were going to squat heavy, we were going to sprint, and then we were going to recover. There was never a component of no rest. So, the idea that rest allows me to train with a greater degree of intensity. So if I squat for a heavy 3 reps and then go over and do a, 10-yard rolling start and run as fast as I can, I might need 3 to 5 minutes to recover so I can do the exact same thing over again, because the replication of speed requires me to run fast. For me to be strong, I have to lift heavy weights. Goes back to Dr. Romanoff. Told me a great story. We'll kind of end on this, but Dr. Romanov told me this incredible story. He said years ago, the Politburo, the Russian, Communist Party, was obsessed with strength conditioning and performance and wanted to win on every stage. So they asked every coach who had Olympic gold medalist, world champion, anybody of any value, they wanted them to submit their programs. And they were going to go through all the programs, and they were going to literally come up with like the definitive program that was going to allow them to train the world and basically win all these gold medals. So they get all this information in, and year 1, year 2, year 3, finally, the Gulag runners, the Politburo comes to them and says, you have to present this. So they had hundreds of sports scientists poring over all of these programs and this, and he's like, it was charts, and there was whiteboards and chalkboards, and there's paper after paper and algorithms done. And the guy gets up to present, And he's like, after 3 years of research, thousands of programs and thousands of athletes, we've only concluded two things. The fastest people in the world ran the fastest in training, and the heaviest people lifted the heaviest weights, or the strongest people lifted the heaviest weights. And that was it. And they yanked him off a stage. And so he's telling me the story. And I was like, yeah, of course, right? The strongest people lift the heaviest weights and the fastest people run the fastest. So I'm driving home after we had had breakfast, after we got to meet. And I was driving, I had to pull over. And I was like, the strongest people lifted the heaviest weights and the fastest people ran the fastest in training. And I was like, it can't be that simple, but it is. So if I whatever I have to do to allow you to lift the heaviest weights consistently, the person that trains with the greatest relative intensity over the longest period of time is the one that's the strongest. The person that's able to run the fastest with the greatest replication of speed over the longest period of time is the fastest individual. So whatever I have to do to get you there, whether it be trunk stability, strength, movement, whatever it looks like, unilateral, whatever it is, I just need you to do those two things well. And there's no component of time. I'm not trying to train for fitness. Mm-hmm. I think we've, fitness has been curb stomped to death. And we've gone far past into performance. So the reason that I think people get stuck in fitness dogma is because fitness is attached to dogma, because this is how you get fit. Now, performance is an open-ended discussion. And because performance is the goal, I can use anything at my disposal to increase performance.
Yeah. That's important to have a goal then.
Yeah.
So we know where we're headed.
Yeah. Well, hey, if if a ship sets sail without a destination, where is it? It's just basically sailing lost. I'm butchering this analogy.
I remembered it.
No. If a ship sets sail without a favorable wind, it has no direction. Something to that extent. Hold on. Wait. A sailing
for a ship without no wind is favorable.
Yeah. What is it?
A ship without a heading. For a ship without a heading, no wind is favorable.
A ship without a destination, no wind is favorable.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Power Athlete Radio. See you. Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by kofi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's ko-fi.com/powerathlete. Your support makes a difference. See ya.